fellas, lady fellas, everyone in society, welcome to the Fantasy and Reality of Fantasy Football Podcast. I'm your host, Spencer Tacker. Today, the ridiculous over-decorated studio, we'll be discussing Week 4 start-sits for the quarterback and running back positions. So, I know that a few of you have players that either aren't doing well so far, being disappointing, or players that you didn't think would go off or absolutely killing it. So, that might be altering your decision on who you should start and who you should sit. Like there are certain players, let's say like Stephon Diggs and Davante Adams. Even though this isn't a receiver show today, we're going to talk about them just specifically because they're not performing as you would expect, not up to the task, not putting points on your team. So there will be decisions you have to make, especially going into the season. We're already in Week 4, so it's almost past the point of not overreacting and freaking out. Maybe in the next couple of weeks, you might want to start to make decisions on whether or not to keep a guy like Diggs or Adams. You know, you might want to try to trade for them, trade away, because Diggs is not doing too much. You might be able to get a decent name for him. And on the other side, Davante Adams hasn't done anything yet, so we might want to trade him for another big name. Or if you don't have him, you might think he'll go off the rest of the season. He's not doing well. He'll be easy pickings for someone who is tired of him, wants to be traded. So you could go out and try to get someone like Davante Adams, who's, like I said, not been performing as well as he could, but could just bust through his ceiling toward the end of the season. So that's something to look out for, but let's get into our start sits. And by the way, if you're wondering why I'm wearing these shades, go back and watch the last video. I explained the whole thing, but let's get right into it. Our first game up, we have the New England Patriots and the Buffalo Bills. Tom Brady is a start. I mean, he's been performing past even expectations for him as far as how much they would run and pass this season so far. The defense is, I don't want to say carrying them, but they're doing very well. So that allows the offense to breathe a little bit. So Brady's performing better, so he's a start. As far as their running backs go, the Buffalo defense is a decent defense, especially against the run. And we have James White coming back after taking last week off. Burkhead's getting a lot of carries. Sony's not quite doing the job, so it's a muddied up backfield. So I would probably have to sit all of them because you don't want insecurities on your team. You want to make sure that guy's getting the ball, he's getting the volume, he's a start on my team, he's going to make me points. So if they're in question like that, like who's going to get the ball, this and that, it's kind of easier for me personally to kind of put them aside and have someone else that I know is going to get the volume. So that's why the entire New England backfield is a sit for me. As far as the Buffalo Bills go, I would start Josh Allen with caution because, as I said earlier, the Patriots defense is pretty fantastic right now. So it could be a tough day for him, but I still believe in Josh Allen. He's doing real well so far. So as I say, he's a start with caution. I wouldn't blame you if you would bench him because, like I said, he's going against that defense. So it'll be a tough matchup for him. He could do well. We'll see how that goes. But as for the running backs, another thing, I would bench them because Singletary is coming back maybe. And then Frank Gore seeing touches, you know, like they'll be splitting more. Plus the defense of the Patriots again might be a big factor. So that's why I'm sitting them. For the next game, we have the Tennessee Titans and the Atlanta Falcons. Marcus Mariota, I'm not a fan, as you know, so I don't think that he will perform all that well. He's been doing decently well, but he's just not a guy that I can trust, so I'll sit him this week. Derrick Henry will be a start. He's getting a lot of touches, a lot of carries, so he'll see the volume. He just needs to see the production like he's been doing. Deion Lewis, I'll bench him. He's become a non-factor. For the Atlanta offense, I'll start Matt Ryan, but he's going to do crazy things. So you'll never be really comfortable starting Matt Ryan because he'll always throw picks, but he also throws touchdowns. So he makes points for your team, even though it's not pretty, doesn't look nice, but he still basically produces results. So it's an ugly win, but it's still points for you. So I'll start Matt Ryan. I'll also start Devonta Freeman. He's been slowly getting an uptick in the carries and yards he gets per game, so I believe that'll be an upward trend. I'll bench Ito Smith. I'm hoping that he doesn't eat into Devonta Freeman's workload. Next, we have the Cleveland Browns and the Baltimore Ravens. I would probably make the decision to bench Baker Mayfield until he starts to become his old natural self, because lately he's kind of been imploding, acting a little odd, making hasty decisions. So unless he gets comfortable in the pocket anytime soon, I'll probably bench him for the foreseeable future. On the opposite side, I would definitely start Nick Chubb. I mean, he's been doing really well. Hopefully he can carry that team. The Baltimore defense is going to be rough, but I think that's going to impact Baker more. It's going to impact Chubb. So speaking of Baltimore, start Lamar Jackson. Basically a no-brainer. He had that one down week against Kansas City, but I mean, it still wasn't all that terrible. He still did well. Mark Ingram did fantastic with those 3 touchdowns. So I'll definitely start Ingram. He's obviously seeing the touches now, so he'll be a confident start for me. Justice Hill's a confident bench, because going with the Ingram thing, Ingram seeing a lot of the touches, so that basically makes Justice Hill a non-factor. Next, we have Kansas City Chiefs and the Detroit Lions. Patrick Mahomes, a start, no problem. Done with that. The thing we want to talk about with this team is the running back field. We want to sit Darwin Thompson. If Shady and Damian Williams play, we're not going to do anything with Darrell Williams. But if each of those 2 guys sit, Darrell Williams will be a guy that I start. It's basically a waiting game on knowing who is going to start and which guy is going to get that first carry. So until game time, it might be just a thing you stick around and wait for the actives, inactives before the game starts, and hopefully you don't have to make a hasty, terrible decision. You can try to wait as long as you can until you figure out the newest news, whatever's going on with that backfield. That way you can make the best decision. So just keep an eye on that. As for Detroit, I would start Matt Stafford. I think he's doing really well, which is an upgrade from last season because he had all those injuries. But he's basically back to his old self, being quiet, under the radar, but still producing numbers, which is the kind of guy he is. So he's a start for me. I would start Kerryon Johnson this week. Kansas City's defense is decent, but they're not that great against the run. Last week, as I said, Ingram had 3 touchdowns. So if Kerryon can get touches on his team, because C.J. Anderson's gone, they have Paul Perkins in. Let's see. Hopefully Kerryon can see the workload, see the heavy volume, and be the productive back that we've been hoping that he would be. Next game, we have the Carolina Panthers and the Houston Texans. I'm going to start Kyle Allen just because he is the backup. He's a starter now because Cam Newton is out, but Kyle Allen's in, so I feel that this is going to be his chance, just like last week, to just throw the ball as much as possible. Might not be the greatest thing for Christian McCaffrey, but he's still Christian McCaffrey. You're going to start him. He had a late start last week, but it ended up well for him. So we'll hope this continues, but I'm thinking Kyle Allen, like I said, is just going to air it out there, try to show everyone what he can do, because when Cam Newton's healthy, they're going to put Cam in. Obviously, it's a no-brainer. But Kyle Allen wants to show everyone, hey, if you also want to look at me, this is what I can do. So Allen's a star for me. C-Mac's a star for me. Deshaun Watson, you probably drafted him decently high for your quarterback, so you have to start him. As far as running backs go, I would bench Hyde Duke Johnson because it's getting muddied up again. Hyde had a great game, and then Duke Johnson had a terrible game. And then this past week, it was more of a muddied up half and half. So it's like until they decide what they want to do, I'll decide to bench them both. Next, we have the Oakland Raiders and the Indianapolis Colts. I would sit Derek Carr. He's been doing decently well, but not enough to make an impact on most teams, a positive impact anyway. He throws to Tyrell Williams and Darren Waller, but it's not, like I said, not enough to produce really well for your team, so he's a bench for me. I would start Josh Jacobs. He should see, hopefully, what he saw in week 1. The last 2 weeks have been not the greatest for Jacobs, but if he can bounce back against this Colts defense, then it'll prove that he deserves to be that number 1 back. And I'll bench Jalen Richard because I believe that Gruden might give the ball a lot more to Jacobs. That way he can prove that he's that number 1 back. So I don't think Jalen Richard is going to see a whole lot of touches. For the Colts, start Jacoby Brissett with caution because he did well last week, started 16 for 16, fell off a tad bit but finished strong. So I think he's going to target any number of his tight ends. So look for that. Him just doing dump offs like he did to Mo Cox last week. T.Y. is kind of iffy. We'll get into that. But Marlon Mack is a start for me. Oakland doesn't have that great of a defense. They're good, but I think Marlon Mack could see a decently productive day against this defense, especially if T.Y. is out or not 100%, so they'll rely on the run game a bit more, so Max should eat. Nyheim Hines, you don't have to worry about him anymore. Unfortunately, he's kind of becoming a non-factor, so it is what it is. Next, we have the LA Chargers and the Miami Dolphins. Bench everyone from Miami, always, no problem. Start Phillip Rivers. He came up short a bit last week, but hopefully that lights a fire in him, and it's Miami. He's going to kill it. For the running backs, I want to start both of them because Austin Eckler is going to see his production. And just like last week, when the Cowboys went against the Dolphins, Tony Pollard even had 100 yards. So they had both running backs for Dallas have over 100-yard rushing games against this Miami Dolphins defense. So I'm thinking maybe they'll do the same thing for the Chargers. So I'll start Justin Jackson because they could be up big, the Chargers, against the Dolphins. Halftime, 35-0 maybe. So Justin Jackson will get his opportunities because they want to sit Austin Eckler. They have Melvin Gordon coming back, but I don't believe he's going to play this week. So looking forward into next week and the rest of the season. We'll get into that when it comes. But as for now, you don't have to worry about Melvin Gordon affecting your decisions with Austin Eckler and Justin Jackson just yet. So next game, the Washington Redskins and the New York Giants. I like Case Keenum. As I've said before, he's a producer, but he just doesn't have those crazy numbers, kind of like Derek Carr, that will win you a game. So he has Terry McLaurin and a few other people, Vernon Davis. He could dump off to Chris Thompson, but like I said, it's just not all that much to be a benefit to your team. So he's a bench for me. I'm going to bench Adrian Peterson, but I will, with caution, start Chris Thompson. He could see those PPR points. And, I mean, it's the Giants. They're not very good, so one of these running backs has to do something. I think it'll be Chris Thompson, so he's the guy I'm going to go with over AP. For the Giants, start Daniel Jones with caution. I think he's going to have a field day. He's going to want to light it up, air it out there just like he did last week. He had 2 passing, 2 rushing touchdowns, so I think he's going to light the world on fire if he can actually prove what he's going to do. He's getting some of his weapons back. He has Saquon injury, but that hopefully will prove that Jones is a better quarterback by not having to rely on the run game. They have Wayne Gallman, but hopefully he can target Ingram. In a couple weeks, he has Golden Tate coming back. So we'll see this dude start to get up and go. Hopefully it means good things. I mentioned Wayne Gallman being the starter now because Saquon's injured. I'm going to bench him this week because it's Wayne Gallman. It's not Saquon, and it's not the greatest opportunity for a rushing offense to do what they do. I mean, it's Saquon. You can't really compare him to Wayne Gallman. It's not like Wayne Gallman is getting the opportunity in the Kansas City offense. I mean, if that was the case, that'd be, a totally different situation. But since it's in New York on the Giants, they're not going to, I don't believe, use him nearly as much as they use Saquon, so that's why he'll be a bench for me. Next, we have the Seattle Seahawks and the Arizona Cardinals. Russell Wilson had a field day last week. It didn't come up all too well for him with a loss, but he still had 400 yards, 4 touchdowns, just like Daniel Jones, 2 passing, 2 rushing. So he had a fantastic day. I think he's going to continue. Arizona's secondary is still, not all there. So he'll definitely be a start for me. Chris Carson will be a start with caution because he fumbled last week. Pete Carroll does not like that. And Rashad Penny was kind of injured. So CJ Prosise saw some touches last week. But I think both of them are kind of going to be not utilized very much when Penny comes back. So Penny and Prosise will each be benches for me. As far as the Arizona offense, I would have to bench Kyler Murray. He's another one of those Derek Carr, Case Keenum guys that sees production, does well, but I don't believe is enough to get you those high numbers that you need to smash your opponent. So Kyler would be a bench for me. As far as David Johnson, he's a start. He's like the number 9 running back right now. So, I mean, if he's a top 10 running back, you have to start him, especially against Seattle's defense, which, I mean, is good. They have Clowney and whatnot, and Bobby Wagner and all those guys. But, I mean, Alvin Kamara went off last week. He did really well. David Johnson's also really nice running back, so I think he could have a productive day. Next, we have the Tampa Bay Buccaneers and the LA Rams. Jameis Winston had a nice day last week. He did really well. He threw 3 touchdown passes, all of those to Mike Evans. We'll see which one of his targets is his favorite for this week against the Rams, if he could actually target somebody. But I'm not sure if this will be a consistent thing, especially against the Rams defense, who's feeling confident. So I'm going to bench Winston, but if you want to start him, I wouldn't blame you. Just going off that little hot streak from last week. So either way, I mean, kind of not doing anything too bad because Winston could go off or the Rams defense can eat him up. We'll have to see how that goes. But as far as the running backs go, I'm definitely going to bench all of them, Barber and Rojo, because, as I said, the Rams defense is there, so I don't think they'll have a chance. For the Rams, I'll start Jared Goff. Hopefully he can produce with numbers. He's done decently well, but not as well as one would hope. So hopefully he can get that going. Tampa Bay defense is not that good. So hopefully he can just get the ball rolling. If the Tampa Bay defense had one strong point, it's the rush defense. So I would have to bench Todd Gurley because I believe the Tampa Bay defense is like 6th against rushing. So if they have one strong point, as I said, it's against the run. So Todd Gurley would be a sit, all those guys with Brown and Jackson and whatnot. So hopefully this means good things for Jared Goff. He'll have to rely on himself in the passing. So that could mean good things for the 3 receivers out there. Next game, we have the Minnesota Vikings and the Chicago Bears. I'm going to start Kirk Cousins. I'm a bit nervous. I'll start him with caution because we'll talk about it later. And I mentioned him earlier, Stephon Diggs. What's going on? We'll get into that later. But if Cousins can target Thielen like he did last week, Thielen had like a receiving and rushing touchdown, I believe. So he's starting to pick up the ball. And then Dalvin Cook, I mean, he's a must-start at this point. He's doing fantastically, running over defenses, everything. Even though it's the Bears' defense, it's Dalvin Cook. So if he's healthy, he's a start. And then for the Bears, I'll probably bench the entire offense. Trubisky is a little too inconsistent. He had those 3 touchdown passes to Taylor Gabriel on Monday night, but it was against the Redskins, whose defense isn't that great. And the Minnesota defense is much tougher, especially with Xavier Rhodes and whatnot. So Trubisky would be a bench for me. Also, David Montgomery and Tariq Cohen would unfortunately be benches for me. Montgomery just needs to see a bit more production to be a relevant guy to start on my team, and he hasn't done that yet, so they're benches for me. The next game we have the Jacksonville Jaguars and the Denver Broncos. I would have to start Leonard Fournette. I think I'm still high on him. I think he's going to do well. As long as he stays healthy, he's going to see volume. As long as they don't throw it 900 times down the field. If they can get Fournette, see his production, then I think he's going to be good to go. As far as the Broncos go, I mean, Sid Joe Flacco, not much going on there. Philip Lindsay is probably going to be a start now because the first couple weeks of the season, he kind of had to split carries with Russ Freeman. Last week it went off, had like a touchdown or two. So he seems to be that number one guy that they're going to put above Russ Freeman. So Lindsay's a start. Russ Freeman is a bench for me. The Sunday night game, we have the Dallas Cowboys going into New Orleans to go against the Saints. Should be an interesting game. All these games that the Saints are playing are interesting, but there'll be so much more if Drew is playing. But injuries do happen, so we have to deal with what's going on now. Start Dak, start Zeke. I think they're going to do well, even though the Saints defense is sometimes really awesome, sometimes not so great. They're wishy-washy. I guess it depends on the week, but I mean, I think Dak will do well. I also think Zeke will do well. But don't start Tony Pollard. Last week was kind of just a one-time thing unless they go against Miami every single week, which, I mean, obviously won't happen. So, bench Pollard. He's not going to be a factor as far as I'm concerned. And then, for New Orleans, Teddy Bridgewater will probably be a bench for me, even though he did decently well last week. You know, he did surprising. He didn't look great, but his numbers showed a lot better than what he actually looked like on the field. So, it's kind of a weird situation, but I would have to bench Bridgewater. But, I mean, if you are in the need to start him, I don't blame you. It's fine because he has all the weapons around him. He just has to get it to them, which is bringing up Alvin Kamara, start. You saw him drag somebody behind him last week. So, dude's a monster. He's fantastic. I love him. He's so fun to watch, and he's incredible. So, he's definitely a start. Latavius Murray would then be a bench because, I mean, they haven't quite used him the same since Drew got injured. So I see that trend of basically just using Kamara as the workhorse and letting Latavius get a couple carries every once in a while. So he's obviously going to be a bench for me. And then for the Monday night game, we have the Cincinnati Bengals and the Pittsburgh Steelers. For the Bengals, I would probably start both Andy Dalton and Joe Mixon. Andy Dalton is like in the top 5 as far as passing yards goes as for quarterbacks. So he's another guy that's doing kind of silently well, like Matt Stafford, you know, just getting the job done, which is a bit surprising, especially with A.J. Green not there. But with John Ross emerging as being a pretty great receiver all of a sudden, except for last week, he kind of had a down week. But the first 2 weeks were fantastic for John Ross. So with Andy Dalton having weapons like that, he's going to do well. So I'd start him. I'd start Joe Mixon. He has come back from that slight injury he had. He had a really fantastic day. I see that progressing. Pittsburgh's defense is not very good. They're in the bottom 10 or so defenses. So, I mean, Mixon should have a decently good day, which means that you have to bench Giovanni Bernard because Mixon's going to start and get most of the workload. For the Steelers, I would possibly bench Mason Rudolph. I mean, he's one of those guys just like Teddy Bridgewater. It's like, if you start him, I kind of don't blame you because he could see the numbers, but it's a little too early to tell. So as of now, he'll be a bench for me. And then I would start James Conner because Cincinnati has a kind of weak run defense. So if Conner can get the ball rolling and not stay injured, he should do well, which means Jalen Samuels is a bench because Conner should see the production, hopefully do well, because as I said, Cincinnati's defense not all that great, so maybe Conner can have a nice bounce back game and not be as disappointing. But those were my week 4 start sits for the quarterback and running back positions. Let me know who you like, who you dislike, what's going on in your head. Leave that down in the comment section below if you have any questions on who should start sit. As always, thank you for tuning in and thank you for your support. Leave all questions, topic suggestions, comments down there in the comment section below. We'll get to anything and all things that you have, answer them as in-depthly and as accurately as possible. Remember that sports is supposed to be enjoyed, so please watch together, tell people about it. We want to grow as much as possible, spread the word. In order to do that, you gotta smash that thumbs up, hit the subscribe button so we keep trying to give you as much content as possible. Hit that notification bell so you can get the information as soon as it's uploaded. But lastly, God bless America and God bless fantasy football. Take care.